Alright, so today I'm going to show you how to add an invoice to one of our road construction contract. So this is one of the contracts we're going to add an invoice to. So typically we add the invoice to the end of the contract. So each one of these two lines is one invoice to this contract. And the goal is to create the final PDF file that we are going to send to the customer, which would look like this. And let's go to the invoice folder for whatever that project is. Alright, so here we go. We typically just copy and paste the last two columns. And then here I'll change this to, let's see how many invoices we had here. This is the last invoice we had. It was 03. This was a refund to 02. So this next invoice is going to have to be 04. So you just increment that. Oh, well, it's not a refund, so take that out. Make sure we take this out. Alright, now we just added this, so it's not part of the table contract. So we need to go, this is ADAE, so we go back to design here, table, resize, and AE now. We increase the size of the table so it will capture these last two columns that we added. Here we go. I'll just copy the format from here, put it back there. Alright, so now we are ready. And it shows 0. I usually like to open up all the filter just to make sure. Alright, the next thing is you want to make sure if you open up all the filter, you see how much is being charged. This one is a refund, so if we are refunding a customer $8,585, but because we copied this last invoice from this one, it carried over. So you want to make sure this shows 0 before you start. And then we also move the X to this one. That's just the indicator that we are working on this one. Alright, so we want this to show 0. So the next thing you need to fix is this formula, because we copied the formula from here. So this is going to be invoice unit price. So unit price is this one, is multiplying it by this quantity. But this is obviously need to be updated, so we'll just delete this and we put this is invoice number 4, and it should show up here in the in the drop down. All right, push enter. Hopefully all the formulas should be updated now. Yeah. All right, so now let's see which one have a quantity. This has a negative quantity because it's a refund, so you want to make sure these are 0. Nah, this is 0. If you open up all the filters, this should show 0 because we haven't added or removed anything from this invoice. Now these invoices work based on quantity, so every item have an associated quantity with it that can be charged, and they're usually in this column I. So for example, this one, there are 97 rooms. For every single room we are charging $138. So the total would be 13,386. Then we can charge this in multiple invoice. So in this case, you can see there is no more quantity remained to be invoiced. What that means, we already invoiced them the total amount. So if you look at this line, you can see how we did it. So we it was a 97, so 48.50 was half of them. We invoiced them in the first invoice, and then on the second invoice, we took the rest of the money so that they're completely charged. Once this shows zero, that means we no longer can invoice them anymore because we already invoiced them in the previous invoices. So you can see we didn't invoice them anymore. Alright, so this starts from zero, and the other thing we need to adjust is the invoice tab. In the invoice tab, see this new the new invoice is not showing up, so we need to refresh the query. Come here, hit refresh, it should show up, but it's not formatted, so all you have to do is picking up this format with this brush and correcting this. Then we need to copy the formula right above this line. Let me see. This is a bit tricky. Okay, this is up above the second line. Above the second line. Alright, let me double check, make sure it's correct. One of these columns is quantity, one of them is the price. So he's capturing that column right there. I usually like everything to be center, so pick this, hit this center button. There we go. Alright, so you also add that. This is the invoice report that eventually we have to send them. You hit this button and it creates this invoice report. This way when the customer gets it, they can see for every item how we charge them. And sometimes they forget. So this kind of shows all the invoices in one line, and then they can look at one item and then they can see how many times that item were invoiced. Um, this way they can make sure they are not being overcharged, and this also make sure we are not overcharging them. But this is pretty much the same as in the contract. In the contract, this is for us to match every single invoice with the item in the contract. Not necessarily we need to show everything here. This is just for us. Versus this one is for the customer. It's only showing the description, the quantity in the contract, and then followed by the quantities being charged per each invoice. Now finally, when that is done, let me just invoice some item here so we can see how it's done. Alright, let's see. I'll just go to part A, see if there's anything to invoice. I should just come to the end. See, these are the remaining is all zero. That means we have already got paid for everything. There is no quantity remaining. It all been invoiced. Go to part B. Alright, so it looks like there are, yeah, it looks like we haven't invoiced them for anything on here. There's quantity needs to be invoiced. Alright, so this is just so we don't have to go back and forth to this column to see what it was. This column, it just put the summary of what the item is, so you don't have to keep going back and forth. I'll go ahead and remove some of these columns, not removing it, but grouping it so everything will fit in a screen. Okay, yeah, let's just minimize them like that so we can see the last one invoice. Alright, so on this one, part B, vanity, remove all vanity, and faucet, take all the dumpster, clean area, quantity 0 out of, okay, so this one we have done 28 out of 98. So we have done 28 rooms. So we put 28 here. So, oh, okay. So see, this should have changed. That's another problem we have. Every time you add a new invoice, you need to update this formula. So this one, all right, needs to also subtract. See, this one is missing. It needs to subtract this quantity and this quantity. So the formula is the total quantity is the blue one. But every time you write the invoice, you're subtracting the quantity associated with that invoice from the total. So you keep subtracting it until this total quantity gets to 0. Alright, so now once you update the formula, it's there. So this formula should be updated with all the other ones. Alright, so now as I add quantity here, you can see it dropping from here. The next one is part vanity assembly and install wooden base. Same here, you add 28. Assembly and some vanity 28. 28. All right, so far $6,000. So and this would be the description you can put in. So the code kind of write the rest of the formula. Excel formula writes this, but the way it will read would say remove old vanity faucet, take all to the dumpster and clean area. Quantity 0 out of total contract. So this doesn't make sense. Out of total contract. Yes, another, when you add the invoice, this description is tailored to the last invoice. So we also need to update the formula here. So see, this was pointing to invoice number 3. Now we need to just simply change this to invoice number 4. Yeah, one thing I missed on the description, it should be very similar format. So see, I have a QTY at the end of the quantity column and amount at the end of amount, but I accidentally deleted these. So Q Q T Y, and here I'll just have to add amount. Alright, so now I can go ahead and update this formula. It's pointing to invoice 3 needs to invoice 4 quantity. Alright, so that's updated too. Now the description should read correctly. It would say take all the dumpster quantity 28, which is this, out of the contract quantity of 97. Remaining quantity is 69. So it's basically telling the customer, hey, we are invoicing 28 out of the agreed contract of 97, and 69 will stay in the contract to be invoiced in the later day. Alright, now let's say we want to only put these items into the invoice that we're going to send to the customer. So we use this sheet to write the official invoice. Move it to here. Let me move it around so you can see the name of the document. Alright, so it's Rose Construction Invoice Tracker version 3. Alright, this has 4 tabs on it. the invoice tab, which is what we eventually print out to send to the customer. You get the customer tab is currently we are working with these three customers. So as you add new customers uh, or new hotels with the same customer, you just inserting that information here once. That has the customer information, the whatever the address the customer chooses to be invoiced at. We get the invoice main. The invoice main, it has some, we'll come to invoice main after invoice detail. Invoice detail is where you basically want to copy and paste the information here. So here we have a new invoice. Sometimes forget the each hotel's HIE stands for Holiday Inn Express. This one is HIS. There we go. Just copy that. And this is invoice 4, just for me to remember. Alright, so we want to add a bunch of items from invoice 4 to here. So if you go back to your contract, and those items are right here. So you can just copy them into here. And I usually just do the paste special. Alright, so click here, go to home, paste, and I'll pick this paste 1, 2, 3. That way the format is not coming here. Alright, and then the English number is the same for all of them. And item, I just tell them 1, 2, 3, 4. So this is how you want it to show up on the actual invoice: item 1, item 2, item 3, item 4. Then the quantity that needs to be charged. So I think everything was 28. Yeah, everything was 28. So quantity 28, 28, 28, 28. And the price, the unit price for each one. We go back there. Okay, invoice, this is the unit price with tax, everything included. So I just copy that because I can't remember it. And I go again to home, paste, special right there. And there's no discount. So okay, we entered this invoice to the invoice detail. Now if I go over here to the invoice main, I have to create an entry for it. So I insert this down. Today is 7/13/20th, and this is from which contract? I'm turning version 21. See, then you want to get it from the, make sure you're also capturing the version of the contract because the version is constantly changing. So this is coming from Hampton Inn and Suite, Ohio, version 21. And when you go to your invoice, you can copy from somebody else here. Always do paste special, so just the value gets here. So this new invoice that is you're gonna put in here, it belongs to this contract. And the invoice number, so here is the invoice number. You just do the same, put the invoice number there. Now it's gonna go pick up the summary from the invoice detail. Once you put the invoice number there, it look for it and it tries to find it. The other thing is okay, you want to make sure you pick the right company here. This is Hampton Inn, so you pick that one over here. And let's see here if we need to put any information there. This is if they have already paid the invoice. It says deposit, but this is if they already paid for the invoice. Then you put that amount there, but they haven't paid for the invoice yet. Over here you have, and this is a special note that you can put in. Just if I put XXX, some note about the invoice, or let me. This invoice is for labor and material to finish material label for fourth floor. Alright, so once you put that into the invoice main, just hit save every once in a while. You come to the actual invoice. Now you should be able to pick that new invoice you just added. So right there, IHS04. So when you pick it, it just shows up there. And I made this little adjust button because there's a lot of dead area. Oh, so you want to make sure you click on that. You should delete the extra, the empty rows, and also you put your special note that you typed in here. The special note that you put in here, that special note is coming. That special note comes right into. Sorry. Right. Then once you hit the adjust button, everything gets adjusted. Now at this point, this invoice, you just double check it is going to the same hotel. Everything should come, by when you pick this from here. It pulls the information from all these other tabs. And here is you simply go to. Alright, that and this would be the invoice that you want to send to the customer. So in this case, you just go to print, and it's gonna look like this. I usually pick, let me bring it up here, Microsoft Print to PDF is sometimes fit better, and I pick fit all columns, so you can fit the whole thing in, and so this way all the columns of the invoice would fit in one screen. And then you can just simply hit print, and once you hit print, you go to that project folder. So in this case, you go to Hotel Rod Shaw, and there's always an invoice folder. So you pick that invoice. You can pick one of these names and just change the invoice number. In this case, the invoice number 4, and you just hit save, and it's gonna save this for you to submit it. Alright, once you save it to the folder, it will look like alright, so your invoice, it looks like this in PDF. It gets saved just like this. This is something you would send to the customer along with few other documents. One of those documents is going to be that invoice itemized report. So let me close that, go back to the contract, and you go over here. You want to make sure this is updated with all the new information. So it's not, you need to hit refresh. Just click somewhere on the query so this button becomes available, and then you just hit refresh. Right, you want to format this. Just copy the format from the last two, add it over here. Alright, copy this formula. Let's just add the dollar amount from this last column. Alright, and I center these and reformat this column to be a dollar currency. Add the dollar sign to it. Right. So now this is the complete report. It shows every single item all the way to the and all the invoices, how that every single item was invoiced all the way to the end. So for example, this item shows we never invoiced it. See, the quantity is always is zero. Total quantity for the contract is 97, but we didn't charge it in the first invoice, not the second invoice, third, fourth, and finally, I'm sorry, on the fourth invoice we charge them 28 quantity. Yeah, then you want to check the print area just to make sure if you send this to them, it's gonna look right. Actually, for this file, I'll send them the Excel sheet because it just keeps getting longer. So you want to send them Excel sheet, but you don't want to send them all these different tabs. Those are internal to the company. So when you click on this button, it's supposed to extract just that sheet. Once you click on that, it would say, hey, if you want to overwrite the previous report, if you see that button, just say yes. Let's go, let's see where it went. So this is called the itemize report, and it's in Excel because it's pretty long and you want to give customer the option of playing around with the filters and all that stuff that Excel has. So it will look like this, and so this is just we was extracted from the contract. So you see, it doesn't have any other tab or any other information. But it's very effective for the customer to review the invoice because they can see the total amount of contract which should match, and those are things you want to also double check. So your total contract amount is this, and then they can see they paid this much for the first invoice, second invoice, third invoice. We refunded them 8,000 over here, and the fourth invoice. So the total this obviously have to be always smaller than this amount. So in this case, they are gonna, once they pay this last invoice, they have paid $142,681.52 out of the total contract amount. And then finally, the final file you want to get ready for the owner to sign is the waiver. And yeah, so the waiver, some customer require it and some don't. All right, so the waiver, um, you get it. It's free. You get a empty template. You pretty much you put the date, um, order, the initial, and you put some. This is the note for your invoice, kind of summary of that what the invoice is about, and then the address and all of this stuff is usually you can use the previous waiver to update the amount of the invoice, and then you send that in DocuSign for the owner to sign, and this waiver goes so the invoice itemized report along with the PDF invoice and this waiver gets emailed to the customer to pay for their invoice. And that is it. So that's how you create the invoice and you put it into the invoice folder for that project. And this is the itemized report. The program names this, so you don't have to worry about it. Let's close this. And here is your contract. Just make sure you always save it. typically like to, before I close the program, I go over data, make sure all the filters are cleared. So when next time you open it, there's nothing hidden. You also, when you're invoicing, you want to also pay attention to any item that is deleted. So that's another thing. I usually, before I start, I remove all the deleted items. Anything that has a word delete, I remove them. So accidentally, I won't invoice the customer with something that was removed from the contract. All right, that's it. This should cover everything.